I never thought I'd be the woman who discovers her husband's affair because of a child's innocent words. But that's exactly what happened on my 40th birthday, when a toddler I'd never met looked my husband in the eyes and called him Daddy in front of our entire family. The cake knife froze in my hand. The room fell silent, except for the flicker of birthday candles and the gentle hum of the air conditioner. My mother-in-law gasped. My sister's wine glass tipped, spilling crimson across the white tablecloth like the blood draining from my face. And David, my husband of 15 years, went pale as the frosting on my untouched cake. "Who is this?" I whispered, staring at the beautiful little girl with hazel eyes that looked eerily like my husband's. Her golden curls bounced as she reached for David, her tiny fingers grasping. "Daddy, up!" she demanded again. The woman who'd arrived uninvited stood awkwardly by our front door, clutching a designer purse that probably cost more than my monthly teacher's salary. "I'm sorry," she stammered, not looking sorry at all. "Lily wasn't supposed to. I didn't know you'd have company." I looked from her to David, searching for denial in his eyes. 15 years of marriage, and I thought I knew every expression on his face. But this one, this mix of terror, shame, and something else I couldn't name, was entirely new to me. "Sarah," David finally said, my name sounding foreign on his lips. "I can explain." "Explain what?" My voice was surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "Explain how this child knows to call you Daddy? Explain who this woman is that has a key to our house? Explain why your daughter looks about 2 years old when you swore to me 3 years ago that Melissa was just a friend from work?" The room seemed to spin. My sister Claire was suddenly beside me, her hand on my shoulder. My father, retired Army colonel who never raised his voice, stood up so quickly his chair toppled backwards. "What the hell is going on, David?" he demanded. And there we all were, frozen in time. My birthday dinner, destroyed. My family, watching me crumble. David, caught in a lie so big it couldn't be hidden anymore. "Please, everyone," David said, his lawyer voice taking over, the same controlled tone he used in courtrooms. "This is a private matter between Sarah and me. If you could all give us some space." "Like hell we will," Claire snapped, her arm now firmly around my shoulders. "Sarah, you don't have to do this here." But strangely, I wanted witnesses. After years of gaslighting and dismissals, I needed others to see this moment of terrible clarity. No more believing his excuses, no more accepting his late nights at the office, no more pretending not to see the lipstick stains he hadn't quite washed off his collar. "No," I said, finding my voice again. "I want everyone to stay." The woman, Melissa, shifted uncomfortably. "David, I didn't know. You said you'd be alone tonight. You said you were going to tell her." "Tell me what?" "That while I was grading papers until midnight, volunteering for extra school activities to save for the baby we kept trying to have, he was building a second life? That while I was injecting fertility drugs and crying over negative pregnancy tests, he had already fathered a child with someone else?" "Lily, come here, sweetie," Melissa cooed, trying to reclaim her daughter. But the little girl had toddled directly to David and was tugging on his pant leg. "Daddy, up," she insisted, confused by his coldness. With trembling hands, I set down the cake knife, suddenly aware of how tightly I was gripping it. The candles had burned down, wax pooling on the frosting that spelled, "Happy 40th birthday, Sarah." 4 decades of life, and I'd never felt more like a fool. "How long?" I asked, the words scraping my throat. David looked at me, then at his parents, then back to the child pulling at his leg. He didn't answer. "How long?" I shouted, my voice breaking, echoing in our vaulted dining room, the room in the house he had insisted we buy in this upscale Boston suburb, even though it stretched our finances to the breaking point. 3 years, he finally admitted. But it wasn't. It wasn't what you think. It was just a few times. A mistake. And then she got pregnant. And You what? My mother stepped forward now. "You decided to play house with 2 women? You decided my daughter wasn't enough?" I raised my hand to silence my mother, needing to hear this from him. 3 years, I repeated. "And how old is Lily?" Melissa answered when David wouldn't. "She just turned 2 last month." I did the math. While I was undergoing my 3rd round of IVF, David was attending his 2nd child's birthday party. While I was sobbing in our bathroom over another failure, Another negative test. He was celebrating milestones with a child he'd hidden from me. "Get out," I whispered. Then louder, "Get out of my house. All of you except my family. Get out." To my shock, David grabbed his keys. "I'll go to a hotel tonight. We can talk tomorrow when you've calmed down." When I've calmed down. As if this was just another disagreement. Like when we fought over kitchen renovations or vacation destinations. "David, don't you dare leave," his mother hissed. "Fix this." But Melissa was already backing toward the door, scooping up her confused daughter. "I'm sorry," she repeated, though her eyes held more triumph than remorse. "I really thought he'd told you by now." As they left, I collapsed into a dining chair, my birthday dress, the new one I'd bought to impress David, crumpling around me. My family surrounded me in stunned silence as the door closed behind my husband. My life as I knew it had just ended. In its place was a gaping hole of questions and betrayals too enormous to comprehend. My name is Sarah Mitchell, 40 years old as of that catastrophic birthday, high school English teacher in Lexington, Massachusetts, and apparently the world's most oblivious wife. 2 weeks after what my sister Claire now calls the birthday bomb, I was still sleeping in our guest bedroom, unable to face the California king bed David and I had once shared. Our house felt enormous and empty without him, though he'd only taken a small suitcase of belongings when he left. 5 bedrooms. We'd bought this place thinking we'd fill it with children. The irony wasn't lost on me that David had a child, just not with me. I moved through my days like a ghost. Wake up, shower, dress, drive to Lexington High, teach teenagers about Shakespeare and Hemingway, grade papers, come home to an empty house, repeat. My students noticed something was wrong. I'd catch them whispering when I zoned out mid-lecture or forgot what I was saying. My principal, Ellen, pulled me aside after I burst into tears during a faculty meeting. "Sarah, you need to take some time," she said, her hand on my arm. "Whatever's happening, you're not okay." But work was the only thing keeping me sane. At school, I could pretend my life wasn't imploding. I could lose myself in Romeo and Juliet and ignore the fact that my own love story had been a lie. My family rallied around me. Claire drove up from New York every weekend. My parents called twice daily. My father threatened to have a talk with David, which I knew meant something much more physical than talking. I begged him to stay away. This humiliation was bad enough without adding family violence to the mix. David tried calling. I blocked his number. He sent emails explaining he was staying with a friend, that he wanted to talk, that we could work through this. I deleted them all. His mother showed up unannounced one evening, insisting that, whatever David did, marriage is sacred. I closed the door in her face, my hands shaking. Melissa didn't contact me, thank God. But I found myself stalking her on social media, torturing myself with photos of her perfect life. Melissa Reynolds, pharmaceutical sales rep, 33 years old, stunning brunette with a body that had somehow bounced back from childbirth without a single stretch mark. Her profile was full of professional headshots, vacation pictures on tropical beaches, and, most painfully, photos of Lily, the little girl with David's eyes. There were no pictures of David on her public profile. They'd been careful about that, at least. But once I knew what to look for, I found the evidence. A man's watch on a hotel nightstand, a masculine hand at the edge of a dinner photo, the shadow of someone taking pictures of Melissa and Lily at the park. 3 years of deception. 3 years of working late and business trips that were actually time spent with his other family. I scrolled back through our own photos, trying to spot when the lies began. Was he already cheating in the smiling Christmas picture from 4 years ago? Was he texting her during our anniversary dinner at that vineyard in Napa? My friends tried to help in their own ways. Rachel brought over wine and offered to key his car. My neighbor Emma dropped off homemade lasagnas and casseroles that I couldn't bring myself to eat. My oldest friend Jen, who'd gone through a divorce 5 years earlier, sat with me one evening and helped me make a list of divorce lawyers. "You need the best," she insisted. "He's a lawyer himself, and he's going to try to screw you over." I nodded numbly. Divorce. Such an ugly word, one I never thought would apply to me. David and I had been college sweethearts, married at 25, building our life together brick by brick. The faithful wife supporting his law career, the devoted husband cheering me on as I completed my master's in education. We were the couple others looked up to, the ones who still held hands at dinner parties and finished each other's sentences. Or so I thought. The fertility struggle had been hard on both of us. 5 years of trying naturally, then tests, then treatments. 2 rounds of IUI, 3 rounds of IVF. The emotional roller coaster of hope and crushing disappointment. The hormone injections that made me bloated and moody. The scheduled sex that felt more like a medical procedure than an act of love. But I thought we were in it together, supporting each other through the hardest challenge of our marriage. Now I realized David had found his escape. While I was obsessing over ovulation calendars and praying for a miracle, he was starting a family with someone else. I avoided our bedroom, but one night, fueled by half a bottle of Merlot and self-destructive curiosity, I went in and opened his side of the closet. His expensive suits hung neatly, color-coded as I'd organized them years ago. On a whim, I checked the inside pocket of his gray Hugo Boss, his court suit, the one he claimed was lucky. Inside was a movie ticket stub. Not unusual except for the date. Last month, a Tuesday night when he'd told me he was working late on a difficult case. A 7:30 showing of the latest Marvel movie. David didn't even like superhero films. He always complained when I wanted to see them. I sank onto our bed, clutching the stub. A movie ticket. Such a small betrayal compared to a secret child. Yet it broke me all over again. They did normal couple things. They had date nights at the movies while I was home alone, thinking my husband was working to support our family. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 5 years of teaching. I couldn't face my students, couldn't pretend to care about essay deadlines and vocabulary quizzes. Instead, I drove to the bank and requested access to our safe deposit box. The bank manager, Mr. Peterson, gave me a sympathetic look. He'd known David and me for years. Had he heard? Was my humiliation already public knowledge in our small community? "Just you today, Mrs. Mitchell?" he asked as he led me to the vault. Yes, just me. The words felt symbolic somehow. Inside the box were our important documents: birth certificates, social security cards, our marriage license, property deeds, and an envelope I'd never seen before, marked Lily, Trust. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside was a trust document, establishing a college fund for Lily Reynolds, with David listed as the grantor. The initial deposit, $50,000. The date, 2 years ago, when I was recovering from our 3rd failed IVF attempt, when money was supposedly too tight for us to consider adoption. I made copies of everything and left the originals. As I drove home, something hardened inside me. The sad, shocked woman from 2 weeks ago was evolving into someone else. Someone colder, more focused, more determined. That evening, I called Jen back. "I'm ready for that lawyer referral now," I said. "And I want the shark you mentioned, the one who makes cheating husbands pay." I thought the revelation of David's secret child was the worst betrayal possible. I was wrong. The next blow came 3 days later, delivered by my own bank with a simple notification: unusual account activity. I was grading papers in the sunroom when the email arrived. Another mundane Thursday afternoon in my new, shattered reality. The message showed a withdrawal of $25,000 from our joint savings account, nearly half of what we had set aside for emergencies. My hands began to shake. I dialed the bank immediately, hoping there was a mistake or fraud alert. The customer service representative confirmed my fear. David had withdrawn the money in person that morning. Perfectly legal since both our names were on the account. I hung up and immediately called Amanda Santos, the divorce attorney Jen had recommended. "He's emptying accounts," I told her, my voice tight with panic. "What do I do?" "Come to my office right now," Amanda directed. "Bring your laptop and any financial information you have. We're filing emergency orders today." 2 hours later, I sat in Amanda's sleek downtown Boston office, watching her type furiously on her computer. At 50, she was formidable in her tailored suit, with the confident demeanor of someone who had seen it all and feared nothing. "We're requesting an automatic temporary restraining order on all marital assets," she explained, "and filing for divorce on grounds of adultery with a request for pendente lite support. That means he'll have to continue supporting you financially while the divorce proceeds." I nodded, trying to process the unfamiliar legal terms through my fog of betrayal. "Will he have to return the money he took?" Amanda's eyes narrowed. "He'll have to account for every penny in discovery, and judges don't look kindly on spouses who start hiding assets." While Amanda worked, I checked our other accounts from my laptop. Our checking account was untouched, for now. The retirement accounts required signatures from both of us to access. But I discovered something that made my stomach clench. David had removed me as the beneficiary on his life insurance policy 6 months ago. The new beneficiary? Melissa Reynolds. He changed his life insurance, I whispered, turning the laptop to show Amanda. She paused her typing, scanning the document. That's going to look very bad for him in court, she said with grim satisfaction. Keep digging. Let's see what else he's been hiding. I spent the next hour combing through our online accounts, finding more evidence of David's double life. Credit card statements showed dinner charges at expensive restaurants on nights he'd claimed to be working late, a recurring monthly payment to a rental company I didn't recognize, hotel charges in cities where he supposedly had conferences, but on dates that didn't match the events he'd mentioned. He has another credit card I don't know about, I realized, noting transfers to an account I couldn't access, probably so I wouldn't see charges related to them. We'll subpoena those records, Amanda assured me, and his bank accounts. If he's been supporting this woman and child, we'll find every payment. By the time I left Amanda's office, the initial divorce papers had been filed, and an emergency hearing was scheduled for Monday morning. I felt hollow, but oddly calm, like I'd moved beyond shock into some new emotional territory. That calm shattered when I arrived home to find David's car in the driveway. For a moment, I considered driving away, but this was my house too. I wouldn't be the one to leave. I found him in the kitchen, looking haggard in wrinkled clothes, his usually meticulous appearance now disheveled. He stood when I entered, uncertainty in his eyes. "What are you doing here?" I asked coldly. "Sarah, please. We need to talk. I've given you space, but it's been over 2 weeks." "You gave me space?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "How considerate of you while you were stealing from our savings account." He had the decency to look ashamed. "I needed to secure an apartment, and my firm has placed me on leave until this situation is resolved. I need to live somewhere." "Your situation?" My voice rose. "You mean the situation where you cheated on your wife for years, fathered a child with another woman, and lied to my face every single day? That situation? I never meant to hurt you," he said, the lawyer mask slipping to reveal genuine regret. "Or was that just another performance? It just happened, and then I didn't know how to tell you, especially with all the fertility issues." "Don't you dare!" I slammed my hand on the counter. "Don't you dare use our inability to have children as an excuse for your affair. We were in that together, David. At least I thought we were." He stepped toward me, and I backed away. "I still love you, Sarah. This doesn't erase 15 years together." The audacity of his statement left me breathless. "Love? You think love involves making a baby with someone else while watching your wife go through fertility treatments? Spending our money on your mistress while telling me we needed to budget? Changing your life insurance to benefit her instead of me?" His eyes widened at the last accusation. "You've been checking our accounts." "Yes, David. I've been checking our accounts because you stole $25,000 this morning." I laughed again, bitterly. "Did you think I wouldn't notice? That money is as much mine as yours," he countered, his tone shifting to something defensive. "And I have obligations to Lily. She's my daughter." The casual acknowledgement of his paternity, spoken in our kitchen where we'd once talked about having our own children, was like a physical blow. "Does Melissa know you're here begging for your marriage back?" I asked. "Or does she think you're at work? Do you lie to her as easily as you lied to me?" David ran his hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it hurt to watch. "It's complicated. No, it's actually very simple. You cheated, you lied, you stole, and now you're served." I pulled the divorce papers from my bag and tossed them on the counter. "I filed today. You've been living a double life, David. Now you get to see what single life feels like." He stared at the papers, then at me. "Sarah, please. We can work through this. Couples counseling, time apart, whatever you need. I made a terrible mistake." "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or burning dinner," I interrupted. "A 3-year affair and a secret child is a choice. Multiple choices, made every day for years. What about everything we've built together?" he pleaded. "This house, our plans." "Our plans?" I echoed incredulously. "Our plan was to have a family together. Instead, you started one with someone else. Behind my back." He looked away, and in his silence I saw the truth. He had no defense because everything I said was true. "I need you to leave," I said quietly. "The papers have all the details. There's a temporary restraining order on our assets, so don't try taking more money. And there's a hearing on Monday." "A restraining order? Jesus, Sarah, I'm not some criminal." No, you're worse. You're a liar who happened to marry an idiot who trusted you. My voice broke slightly. Now get out of my house before I call my father and have him remove you. David gathered the divorce papers slowly, as if still processing that this was really happening. At the door, he turned back. I do love you, Sarah. That wasn't a lie. I looked at the stranger who had been my husband and felt nothing but cold determination. Save it for the judge, counselor. And don't forget to tell Melissa you'll be paying child support through official channels from now on. After he left, I changed the locks, then sat on my kitchen floor and sobbed until there were no tears left. Not for the man who had just left, but for the woman who had believed in him, who had built her life around a foundation of sand. The week before the preliminary hearing, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I found myself wandering through our house at night, touching photographs and mementos, piecing together the real story of my marriage. In my home office, I pulled out old photo albums that hadn't been opened in years, seeking answers in the frozen moments of our past. David and I met during sophomore year at Boston University. I was studying English literature, dreaming of teaching. He was pre-law with ambitious plans. The first photo of us together showed 2 laughing 20-year-olds at a campus Halloween party. Me dressed as Jane Austen. Him as a half-hearted vampire with plastic fangs and a cape. I remembered that night so clearly, how he'd quoted Pride and Prejudice to impress me, stumbling over Darcy's lines but winning my heart with the effort. How he'd walked me back to my dorm in the crisp October air and asked if he could see me again. No games, no pretense. How I'd felt like I'd finally found someone who saw me, really saw me. I flipped through more pages. Graduation day, both sets of parents beaming beside us. Our budget wedding at my parents' church in Springfield. Our honeymoon in Maine because we couldn't afford anything more exotic. David wearing a paint-splattered t-shirt while we renovated our first tiny apartment. Me grading papers at our secondhand dining table while he studied for the bar exam, both of us surrounded by takeout containers because neither had energy to cook. We had been so young, so hopeful, so certain that love would carry us through anything. When David passed the bar and landed his first job at a corporate firm, we celebrated with champagne in plastic cups because we hadn't yet bought proper glassware. I'd just secured my first teaching position at a public high school, and we toasted to the beginning of our real adult life. My finger traced the outline of our younger selves. When had that idealistic couple become strangers? When had his ambition turned into something that excluded me? I found photos from the year we decided to try for a baby. We were both 30, established in our careers, financially secure enough for a modest home in the suburbs. The pictures showed us renovating the room that would become a nursery, my face glowing with anticipation as David assembled a crib. A crib we later donated when years passed with no baby to fill it. The first miscarriage happened 3 months after we started trying. I remembered the cramping, the blood, the emergency room at midnight. David had held my hand so tightly as the doctor confirmed what we already knew. Our baby was gone. It's common, the doctor had said kindly. Most couples go on to have healthy pregnancies. But we weren't most couples. After a year of trying again, tests revealed I had endometriosis, making conception difficult. David had researched treatment options with the same thoroughness he approached his legal cases. Together, we decided to try fertility treatments. I found pictures of us at David's parents' anniversary party, 7 years into our marriage. In the photo, his arm was around my waist, but his smile seemed strained. Was that when it started? Was he already pulling away? By our 10th anniversary, we had endured 3 years of fertility treatments. I discovered a card David had given me that year, tucked into the album. To my best friend and the love of my life, he'd written, no matter what happens, we have each other. Had he meant it then? Or was he already seeing Melissa? The timeline was difficult to pinpoint, but if Lily was 2 now, and the affair had been going on for 3 years, I did the math. Melissa must have gotten pregnant shortly after our 3rd and final IVF attempt failed. While I was deep in depression, mourning the children we might never have, David was creating a new life, just not with me. The betrayal cut deeper as I realized how much I had sacrificed for our marriage. I'd turned down a position as department chair that would have required evening commitments, choosing instead to preserve time with David. I'd used my summer breaks to accompany him on business trips, waiting in hotel rooms while he attended conferences, because we valued our time together. I found photos from my parents' 40th wedding anniversary 5 years ago. My father, retired Colonel James Walker, had pulled David aside that night. "Take care of my little girl," he'd said, with the gruff affection of a military man unused to expressing emotions. David had promised he would. Another lie. My mother, Elizabeth, a high school principal until her retirement, had always adored David. "He reminds me of your father," she'd told me once. Steady, reliable, a man of his word. The irony made me wince now. I discovered a folder of emails I'd printed years ago, notes David and I had exchanged during workdays, small affirmations of love. "Thinking of you. Can't wait to see you tonight. You make everything worthwhile." When had those stopped? I couldn't remember. They had faded so gradually I hadn't noticed their absence. In our bedroom closet, I found a shoebox of mementos I'd saved from our courtship. Movie ticket stubs, dried flowers from bouquets, handwritten notes. I'd been so sentimental, preserving evidence of our love story. Meanwhile, David had been crafting an entirely different narrative. Dawn broke as I sat surrounded by the artifacts of my marriage, seeing with fresh eyes how much of myself I had poured into this relationship. I had shaped my career around our partnership, planned my life around our shared dreams, oriented my entire existence toward a future with David that now would never come. What hurt most wasn't just David's betrayal, but the realization of how much I had given up for him. Opportunities declined, friendships neglected, my own desires set aside to prioritize our marriage. I had been so focused on being the perfect wife that I'd lost sight of Sarah Walker, the woman who existed before she became Sarah Mitchell. I thought of all the times I'd defended David to friends who thought he worked too much. "He's building our future," I'd insisted. Now I understood he'd been building a future that didn't include me. Claire arrived later that morning, letting herself in with the new key I'd given her. She found me still surrounded by photos and memorabilia, red-eyed from crying and lack of sleep. "Oh, Sarah," she sighed, kneeling beside me. "You're torturing yourself." "I'm trying to understand when it all went wrong," I explained, my voice hoarse. "There must have been signs I missed." Claire gathered the photos into a pile. "Stop this. You didn't miss anything because he deliberately hid it from you. This isn't your failure. It's his." "But 3 years, Claire. 3 years of lies. Right under my nose. Because he's a liar," she said firmly. "Not because you're stupid or unobservant." She helped me to my feet and guided me to the kitchen, where she made coffee and toast I couldn't eat. "The hearing is tomorrow," she reminded me. "You need to be strong, not exhausted from an all-night trip down memory lane." I gave him everything, I whispered. My 20s, my 30s, my dreams of having a family. Claire took my hands across the table. "And now you'll take it all back and build something new, something better." My sister had always been my fiercest defender. 5 years younger, but infinitely wiser in some ways. Claire had never settled for less than she deserved. When her college boyfriend cheated, she'd walked away without a second glance. "No second chances for cheaters," she declared. "They don't change. What if I can't start over?" I asked, voicing my deepest fear. "I'm 40, Claire. No children. Soon to be divorced. Who am I without this marriage?" "You're Sarah Walker," she said firmly, using my maiden name. "Brilliant English teacher who changes students' lives. Daughter of James and Elizabeth Walker, who raised you to be stronger than this. Sister of Claire Walker, who knows you're capable of anything. And a woman who deserves so much more than what David gave you." I nodded, trying to absorb her conviction. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Good," Claire said, surprising me. "Fear means you're about to do something brave." That afternoon, we boxed up David's toiletries and the clothes he hadn't taken, placing everything in the garage where he could retrieve it without entering the house. Claire helped me move his remaining items from our bedroom into the guest room, which I would now consider his space until the divorce was finalized. "You should redecorate," she suggested. "New paint, new bedding, exercise his presence." I hadn't thought that far ahead, but the idea took root. This house, paid for partly with my teaching salary and partly with an inheritance from my grandmother, didn't have to remain a shrine to my failed marriage. That evening my parents arrived, insisting on staying through the hearing. My father checked all the locks and installed a security camera by the front door. My mother filled the refrigerator with home-cooked meals and the liquor cabinet with wine. "We're not letting you face this alone," Dad said, his military bearing softened by concern. That night, surrounded by my family, I felt something shift inside me. The rawness of betrayal was still there, but alongside it grew a steely determination. David had taken enough from me, my trust, my security, my sense of self. I wouldn't let him take my future too. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. Monday at the Suffolk County Probate and Family Court. I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit I'd worn to parent-teacher conferences, wanting to appear professional and composed. Claire helped me apply concealer to the dark circles under my eyes, and my mother insisted I eat toast with peanut butter for staying power. "Remember," Amanda Santos instructed as we waited outside the courtroom, "let me do the talking. If the judge asks you questions, be brief and stick to facts. No emotional outbursts, no matter what David or his attorney says." I nodded, clutching my handbag so tightly my knuckles whitened. Through the crowded hallway, I spotted David with a man I recognized as Richard Hoffman, a senior partner at David's firm and apparently now his divorce attorney. David looked polished again, his moment of dishevelment at our house replaced by his courtroom appearance. Tailored suit, perfectly knotted tie, the gold watch I'd given him for our 10th anniversary gleaming on his wrist. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, leaning to whisper something to Hoffman. The casual way he stood there, as if this were just another day at work, made my stomach churn. "He brought Richard," I murmured to Amanda. "They're colleagues. Is that allowed?" "It's unusual, but not prohibited," she replied, unfazed. "Richard's reputation won't help David if the facts aren't on his side." When our case was called, we filed into the courtroom. I focused on breathing steadily, aware of my parents and Claire sitting in the row behind me. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, scanned the papers before her. "Mitchell versus Mitchell," she stated. "Petition for divorce and emergency orders regarding marital assets. Mrs. Santos, you may proceed." Amanda rose confidently. "Your Honor, we're seeking temporary orders freezing all marital assets after Mr. Mitchell withdrew $25,000 from joint savings without consultation. We're also requesting exclusive use of the marital home for Mrs. Mitchell during the pendency of the divorce and temporary support payments, as outlined in our petition." Richard Hoffman stood next. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges the withdrawal, but maintains it was for legitimate living expenses after being forced to leave his home. We're requesting equal access to marital funds and alternating use of the marital residence." The judge looked between the attorneys. "The financial restraining order will remain in place pending full financial disclosure from both parties. Mr. Mitchell, you had no right to withdraw funds unilaterally, regardless of your living situation. Those funds must be accounted for." I felt a small surge of relief until she continued. "As for the marital home, I see no evidence of abuse or danger requiring exclusive possession. The parties will need to work out a schedule or consider selling the property." Amanda interjected. "Your Honor, there are special circumstances. Mr. Mitchell has been engaged in a long-term extramarital relationship resulting in a child. Mrs. Mitchell only recently discovered this betrayal in her own home, in front of family members. Returning to this shared space would be emotionally devastating for my client." Richard Hoffman's response chilled me to the bone. "Your Honor, while my client acknowledges a relationship outside the marriage, Mrs. Mitchell's infertility and emotional distance contributed significantly to the breakdown of the marriage. Mr. Mitchell sought comfort elsewhere, only after years of a physically and emotionally barren relationship." The courtroom seemed to tilt. My infertility? My emotional distance? David was blaming me for his affair? Amanda's hand on my arm kept me seated when I wanted to stand and scream. The judge frowned at Hoffman. "Counsel, that approach isn't helpful. The court isn't interested in assigning moral blame." "Nevertheless, Your Honor," Hoffman continued smoothly, "the marital difficulties were substantial and predated any outside relationship. Furthermore, we believe Mrs. Mitchell's behavior has become erratic. She changed the locks without notice and has refused all communication with my client. After discovering his 3-year affair and secret child," Amanda countered, her voice controlled but icy. The back and forth continued, but I barely heard it. I was staring at David, who wouldn't meet my eyes. He had authorized this strategy. He had told his lawyer to blame my infertility, my medical condition, my deepest pain, for his decision to cheat. When the judge finally spoke again, her words penetrated my fog. "The temporary orders are as follows. The financial restraining order remains in place. Mr. Mitchell must account for the $25,000 withdrawal within 7 days. Mrs. Mitchell may maintain primary residence in the marital home, but Mr. Mitchell is permitted access with 24 hours notice to retrieve personal items. Both parties are ordered to complete full financial disclosure within 30 days. It was a partial victory, but I felt no triumph. As we stood to leave, I noticed a movement at the back of the courtroom. Melissa Reynolds slipped into a seat in the last row, wearing a tailored dress that highlighted her slim figure. She hadn't been there before. She must have entered during the proceedings. David noticed her too, his expression flickering between surprise and something else. Embarrassment, irritation. I couldn't tell, but the message was clear. She was checking up on him. Outside the courtroom, Amanda conferred with me briefly before heading to her next appointment. My family surrounded me protectively as we walked toward the exit, but Richard Hoffman intercepted us. Mrs. Mitchell, he began formally. My client would like a word. She has nothing to say to him, my father interjected. Actually, I do. I faced David directly. You blamed me? My infertility? That's your defense? David at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Sarah, that's not exactly... It's exactly what your lawyer said in there. My barren relationship? Those were his words, David. Words you approved. The legal strategy requires... Don't talk to me about legal strategy. I cut him off. This isn't one of your corporate cases. This is our life. My life. That you destroyed. Claire moved closer to me. Let's go, Sarah. He's not worth it. David's eyes darted toward the courtroom doors, where Melissa now stood watching. The sight of her sent a fresh wave of humiliation through me. She was here, witnessing my pain, perhaps even enjoying it. Is this what you wanted? I asked him quietly. Both of us at once, watching your performance? Did you bring her here to see me fall apart? I didn't know she was coming, he said quickly. Too quickly. Like you didn't know she'd show up at my birthday with your daughter? I laughed bitterly. You're a better liar than that, David. At least you used to be. Melissa approached then, her confidence faltering slightly as she encountered my entire family. David, she said, her voice soft but insistent. We need to go. Lily's daycare called. The casual intimacy of it, the shared responsibility, the we that excluded me, was like a knife between my ribs. David nodded to her, then turned back to me. Sarah, please, can we talk privately sometime? There's so much more to explain. There's nothing left to say. I stepped around him, head high despite the tears threatening. Enjoy your new family. I hope she never discovers what you're really capable of. As we walked away, I heard Melissa ask David, what did she mean by that? His response was too low to catch, another secret shared between them. Outside the courthouse, in the harsh April sunshine, I finally let the tears fall. My mother held me while I sobbed, there on the public steps where anyone could see. I didn't care anymore. The hearing had shown me exactly who David was now, a man willing to use my deepest pain against me, to rewrite our history to justify his betrayal. I hate him, I whispered between sobs. I actually hate him. That's progress, Claire said, rubbing my back. Hate is stronger than heartbreak. My father stood slightly apart, his military bearing rigid with suppressed fury. Say the word, Sarah, and I'll... No, Dad, I interrupted, wiping my eyes. He's not worth destroying your life over. We drove home in silence, each lost in thought. At the house, my mother went straight to the kitchen to make tea, her solution for every crisis, while Claire helped me change out of my court clothes into something more comfortable. It was a good outcome. Legally, she reminded me. You get to stay in the house. The house we bought together, filled with memories I can't escape, I replied dully. Some victory. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. You did well today. Sorry about Hoffman's tactics. Standard mudslinging. Don't let it get to you. Easy for her to say. She hadn't just had her medical condition used as justification for her husband's affair in open court. A second text followed. Just FYI. Change the beneficiary on his life insurance is a big red flag to the court. Using that in our next filing. I put the phone down and moved to the window, staring out at the garden David and I had planted together our second spring in this house. The daffodils were blooming now, yellow trumpets announcing a renewal I couldn't feel. Claire joined me, resting her head on my shoulder. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about how many more humiliations I can endure. I answered honestly. How many more times I'll have to see them together, hear David's excuses, be painted as the barren, frigid wife who drove him to another woman's arms. As many as it takes to get what you deserve in the divorce, she said pragmatically. And then never again. That evening, after my parents had gone to bed in the guest room and Claire was showering, I sat alone in the kitchen with a glass of wine. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling wood. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry about today. I truly never meant for any of this to happen. Melissa. I stared at the message, anger building like a physical force in my chest. How dare she contact me? How dare she witness my humiliation and then offer platitudes? Without thinking, I typed back. Which part didn't you mean to happen? Sleeping with my husband for 3 years? Having his child? Showing up at my house on my birthday? Or coming to court today to watch him destroy me? The response came quickly. I didn't know he was going to blame you. That was cruel. My fingers flew across the screen. Did you know he was married when you met him? A pause. Then, yes. At least she was honest about that. I typed again. Then you meant for all of this to happen. You just didn't want to face the consequences. Block this number. If you contact me again, I'll include these messages in my court filings. I blocked her before she could respond, then hurled my phone across the kitchen. It clattered against the backsplash and fell to the floor, screen miraculously intact. Claire found me there, sitting in the dark, silent tears streaming down my face. What happened? She asked, retrieving my phone. I told her about Melissa's message, showing her the exchange. You should forward this to Amanda, she advised. It's evidence of Melissa's knowledge of the affair from the beginning. I nodded numbly, too exhausted to feel anything but a dull, pulsing rage. Sarah, Claire said gently, you can't keep living like this. The anger will eat you alive. Then what am I supposed to do? I demanded. Forgive them. Move on like nothing happened. No, she said firmly. But you need to find a way forward that isn't just reacting to David's betrayal. You need to decide what you want your life to be now. Her words hung in the air between us, a challenge I wasn't ready to accept. How could I envision a future when my past had been so thoroughly demolished? How could I move forward when every step felt like walking on broken glass? But somewhere deep inside, beneath the hurt and rage, a small voice whispered that Claire was right. This couldn't be my whole story. David's betrayal couldn't be the defining moment of my life. That night, I slept dreamlessly for the first time since my birthday, exhausted by the day's emotions. When I woke the next morning, something had shifted inside me. The pain was still there, but alongside it was something new, a tiny flicker of possibility, of a life beyond betrayal. 2 days after the hearing, I returned to school. My principal, Ellen, had been surprisingly understanding about my absences, offering me the rest of the semester off if I needed it. I need to work, I told her. I need something normal, something that's still mine. My first class that morning was AP English Literature with the seniors. As I stood before them, discussing the themes of betrayal in The Great Gatsby, I felt a strange disconnection, as if watching myself from a distance. Here I was, analyzing fictional infidelity, while my own marriage crumbled under the weight of real deception. Ms. Mitchell? A student's voice pulled me back to the present. Zoe, one of my brightest students, was watching me with concern. Are you okay? You seemed far away for a minute. I forced a smile. Just thinking about Daisy's choices. Let's continue. After school, I stayed late grading essays, reluctant to return to the empty house. Around 6, a knock at my classroom door startled me. I looked up to find Ellen holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, she said, placing 1 cup on my desk and taking a seat across from me. Want to talk about it? For a moment, I considered deflection, maintaining the professional distance I'd always kept with colleagues. But suddenly, the weight of pretending felt too heavy. My husband had an affair, I said, the words still strange on my tongue. For 3 years. They have a child together. I found out on my birthday when the little girl called him Daddy in front of my entire family. Ellen's eyes widened. Sarah, my God, I'm so sorry. Once I started talking, I couldn't stop. I told her everything. The affair, the preliminary hearing, David blaming my infertility, Melissa showing up at court. The worst part, I concluded, is that I still don't understand why. Was I not enough? Did he stop loving me? Was it all a lie from the beginning? Ellen considered this, her expression thoughtful. Maybe the why doesn't matter as much as you think. What do you mean? I mean that searching for a satisfying explanation for someone else's terrible choices can be an endless rabbit hole. She leaned forward. My ex-husband cheated too, 20 years ago. I spent months torturing myself with why, begging him to explain. His reasons never made sense, because there is no sensible reason to betray someone who loves you. I hadn't known this about Ellen. In 5 years of working together, she'd never mentioned a divorce. What did you do? I asked. Eventually, I stopped asking why, and started asking what. What did I want my life to look like without him in it? Her words echoed Claire's advice from the night after the hearing. And what was your answer? Ellen smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her usually serious face. I decided I wanted adventure. I spent the summer backpacking through Europe alone. I applied for a principal position instead of staying a teacher. I bought a motorcycle. She laughed at my surprise. Sold it 2 years later, but it was exhilarating while it lasted. You seem happy, I observed. I am happy. Not because of the divorce. That was hell. But because I stopped defining myself by that relationship and remembered who who Ellen, really was. As I drove home that evening, Ellen's words played in my mind. Who was Sarah Walker beneath the identity of Sarah Mitchell, devoted wife? What did I want my life to look like now? The house was mercifully empty when I arrived. My parents had reluctantly returned to Springfield that morning, and Claire had gone back to New York with promises to return on the weekend. I wandered from room to room, seeing my home with fresh eyes. Every space held David's imprint. The living room furniture we'd chosen together, the kitchen we'd renovated 3 years ago, the office with his law books still on the shelves, the bedroom where we'd slept side by side while he carried the secret of his other family. I stopped at the closed door of what should have been a nursery. We'd left it empty after the last failed IVF attempt, a shrine to what might have been. I hadn't entered in almost 2 years. Taking a deep breath, I turned the handle. The room was dusty, but otherwise unchanged. Pale yellow walls we'd painted together, empty bookshelves waiting for children's stories, a rocking chair my father had restored as a gift, and in the corner, a small box containing the few baby items I'd allowed myself to buy over the years. A silver rattle, a tiny pair of booties, a stuffed bear. I sank into the rocking chair expecting tears, but none came. Instead, I felt something shifting inside me, like ice breaking up on a frozen river. This room, like my marriage, had been preserved in a state of perpetual hope and perpetual disappointment. And for what? So David could father a child with another woman while I mourned our infertility, so I could remain suspended in grief while he built a new life? I stood abruptly and opened the windows, letting fresh spring air blow through the stale room. Then I began emptying the closet, pulling out the baby items I'd stored there, the gender-neutral onesies purchased during particularly optimistic cycles, the parenting books that had never been used. By midnight, the room was transformed, boxes stacked for donation, furniture rearranged, the shrine dismantled. I wasn't sure what this room would become, but it would no longer be a memorial to what I couldn't have. The next day, I called Amanda Santos with a new request. I want to change my name back to Walker, I told her. How soon can we file the paperwork? We can include it in the divorce petition, she said. May I ask what prompted this? I'm reclaiming myself, I answered simply. That weekend, I declined Claire's offer to visit, and instead drove to a small bed and breakfast on Cape Cod that David and I had never visited together. I walked alone on the beach, the April wind whipping my hair, and felt something I hadn't expected. Freedom. Not happiness. Not yet. The wound was too fresh for that, but a sense of possibility that had been absent in the first shell-shocked weeks after my birthday. I thought about Ellen's question, what did I want my life to look like now? The answer didn't come all at once, but pieces began to form. I wanted to travel, something David had never prioritized. I wanted to write, perhaps the novel I'd been outlining in secret for years. I wanted to rediscover friendships I'd neglected while focusing on my marriage, and maybe someday, I might even want to love again, though that possibility seemed distant and hazy, like a ship on the far horizon. On Sunday evening, I returned home feeling steadier than I had in weeks. As I turned onto my street, I noticed David's car parked in the driveway. My first instinct was anger. He was supposed to give 24 hours notice before coming to the house, but beneath the anger was something new: indifference. I didn't care that he was there. I didn't care what he wanted. He was sitting on the porch steps, a cardboard box beside him. He stood when I pulled in. "You didn't give notice," I said by way of greeting. "I know. I'm sorry. I texted, but you didn't respond." I checked my phone and saw his message, sent that morning. I'd been too busy enjoying my solo beach walk to notice. "What do you need?" I asked, keeping my distance. "Just some files from the office and my winter clothes." He gestured to the box. "I already got what I needed. I used my key." I frowned. "You're not supposed to just enter the house." "I know. I'm sorry. I thought—" He trailed off, studying my face. "You look different." "I am different." I moved past him to unlock the front door. "You can go now." "Sarah, wait." He reached for my arm but stopped short of touching me. "I've been thinking about what happened in court. The things Richard said about our fertility issues. It was wrong. I never should have let him use that strategy." I turned back to face him, curious despite myself. "Why did you then?" He looked away, uncomfortable. "It seemed like the right legal approach, but it wasn't right morally. I know that now. 3 weeks ago, I would have been pathetically grateful for that admission." I told him honestly. "Now I just wonder why it took you so long to develop a conscience." "I deserve that," he acknowledged. "But I want you to know I never meant to hurt you." I laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet evening air. "You had unprotected sex with another woman, got her pregnant, maintained a relationship with her for years, watched me go through fertility treatments, knowing you had a child with someone else, and then blamed my medical condition for your choices. What exactly did you think would happen, David?" He had no answer for that. "The truth is," I continued, surprising myself with my calmness, "you didn't think about me at all. I was just the convenient wife at home, the backdrop to your real life. Well, congratulations. You're free now." "I never wanted a divorce," he said quietly. "No, you wanted everything. Me at home and her in a separate apartment with your child. You wanted to keep playing both sides indefinitely. That's actually worse than wanting a divorce, David." I walked into the house, leaving him standing on the porch. Through the window, I watched him lift the box and walk slowly to his car. There was no satisfaction in seeing his defeated posture, no triumph in having the last word, just a quiet recognition that the man driving away was a stranger to me now. That night, I did something I'd been avoiding. I called my oldest friend from college, Jennifer, who had moved to Seattle years ago. Our friendship had drifted as my marriage consumed more of my attention, but she answered on the second ring as if we'd spoken yesterday. "Oh my God, Sarah." Her familiar voice brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "I was just thinking about you. Jen, I'm getting divorced," I said without preamble. David had an affair. They have a 2-year-old daughter. Her gasp was followed by a stream of creative profanity that made me laugh despite everything. "That absolute waste of oxygen," she concluded. "Tell me everything." And so I did, the whole ugly story spilling out while Jen listened, interrupted occasionally by her outraged comments. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Sarah, I'm so sorry this happened to you," she finally said, "but I have to tell you something, and please don't take this the wrong way." "What is it?" "I never liked him," she admitted. "He always seemed to be molding you into what he wanted, not loving you for who you were. I should have been offended, but instead felt only a strange sense of validation." "Why didn't you say anything? Would you have listened?" she asked gently. "You were so in love with him, and I was just happy you were happy. But the Sarah I knew in college, the one who wanted to write novels and travel to literary landmarks and teach in other countries, she started disappearing after you got married." Her words hit me with the force of revelation. Had I really changed that much? Had I willingly diminished myself to fit David's vision of a suitable wife? "The old Sarah is coming back," I told her, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "Actually, a new Sarah is emerging, one who knows better." "Good," Jen said fiercely. "And when you're ready, you should come visit me in Seattle. The Pacific Northwest is excellent for reinvention." After we hung up, I wandered into my home office and opened my laptop. In a password-protected folder labeled Curriculum Ideas was a document I hadn't opened in years. The outline and first 3 chapters of a novel I'd started before my fertility treatments consumed all my creative energy. I began to read, reacquainting myself with my own voice, my own imagination. The story wasn't perfect, but it was mine. wholly mine, separate from David, separate from the life we'd built together. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider a future not defined by loss and betrayal, but by possibility and self-discovery. When I finally went to bed, I slept in the center of the mattress, spreading my limbs like a starfish, claiming the space that had always been half his. Tomorrow, I decided, I would start looking for a new bed, one without memories of David embedded in every inch. A month after the preliminary hearing, life had settled into an uneasy new normal. I was teaching full-time again, sleeping better, and had even started working on my novel in the evenings. Amanda Santos was handling the divorce proceedings efficiently, keeping me updated without drowning me in legal details. David had moved into an apartment across town and was following the court's orders about accessing the house, always with notice, always when I wasn't home. Our direct communication was minimal, conducted primarily through terse text messages and lawyers. Through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances, I heard rumors about his relationship with Melissa. Some said they were living together. Others claimed they'd already split up. I forced myself not to care either way. David's romantic life was no longer my concern. On a rainy Tuesday in May, I received an unexpected email from Thomas Reynolds with the subject line, "Information you should have." I didn't recognize the name initially, but the message explained everything. "Dear Mrs. Mitchell, we've never met, but I'm Melissa's ex-husband. I understand you're going through a divorce from David Mitchell due to their affair. I have information you might find valuable for your divorce proceedings. If you're willing to meet, I can share documents and details that could significantly impact your settlement. Sincerely, Thomas Reynolds." I stared at the screen, heart racing. Was this a trick? A trap set by David or Melissa? Or was it genuine? Another wounded spouse reaching out. I forwarded the email to Amanda with a quick note. "Is this legit? Should I respond?" Her reply came within the hour. "Interesting. Could be very valuable or could be trouble. If you meet, do it in public and bring someone with you. Don't sign anything. And let me know what you learn." After careful consideration, I replied to Thomas, suggesting we meet at a coffee shop downtown the following afternoon. I asked Claire to drive up from New York to accompany me, not trusting myself to handle this alone. "It could be nothing," I told her on the phone, "or it could be exactly what we need. Either way, I'll be your bodyguard," she promised, "though I'm not sure what I'm guarding you from." "Me neither," I admitted, "but I'd feel better having you there." The coffee shop I'd chosen was bustling with afternoon customers when Claire and I arrived the next day. We secured a table near the back, positioned so we could see the entrance. At precisely 3 o'clock, a man entered who could only be Thomas Reynolds, tall, sandy-haired, scanning the room with purpose. I raised my hand slightly, and he made his way to our table. "Sarah Mitchell?" he asked, extending his hand. "Thomas Reynolds, and you are—" He looked questioningly at Claire. "My sister," I explained. "Claire Walker." He nodded, seeming to understand my need for backup. "Smart move. I'd have brought someone too if I were in your position." Thomas ordered a black coffee and waited until the barista had moved away before speaking again. "I'm sorry about what you're going through," he began, his tone sincere. "I was in your position 3 years ago, though without the public revelation. Melissa was more discreet when she left me for David. I tried to hide my surprise." "She left you for him? They've been together that long?" He nodded. "Our divorce was finalized just before Lily was conceived. Melissa and I were married for 5 years. No children. She always said she wasn't ready. Apparently, she just wasn't ready with me." The bitterness in his voice was familiar, a reflection of my own. "I'm sorry that happened to you," I said, and meant it. "But I don't understand what information you have that could help me." Thomas reached into his messenger bag and pulled out a manila folder. "Before I show you this, I want to be clear. I'm not doing this out of vindictiveness. Melissa and I have a civil relationship now for the most part. But when I heard about your situation, it felt wrong not to share what I know." He slid the folder across the table. Inside were bank statements, property records, and what appeared to be trust documents. "What am I looking at?" I asked, overwhelmed by the paperwork. "Evidence that David Mitchell has been hiding assets," Thomas said bluntly. "For at least 3 years. Claire leaned forward, suddenly alert. "How do you know this?" "I'm an accountant," Thomas explained. "When Melissa and I divorced, I made sure all our assets were properly disclosed. After they got together, Melissa occasionally came to me with tax questions. Old habits die hard, I guess. About a year ago, she mentioned something that caught my attention. A property David had purchased in Maine under an LLC. I frowned. David doesn't own property in Maine. That's my point, Thomas said gently. He does, but you don't know about it. He guided me through the documents one by one. The property in Maine, a lakeside cabin purchased through an LLC with David listed as the managing member. Bank accounts in the name of the same LLC with substantial balances. Investment accounts I'd never seen. How did you get these? Claire asked suspiciously. Some are public records. Some came from Melissa during our occasional consultations. And some, he hesitated. Let's just say I have connections in the financial industry who owed me favors. I wasn't sure if I should be grateful or alarmed by Thomas's methods. Why are you showing me this? What do you want? He sat back, hands wrapped around his coffee cup. Nothing from you, specifically. But David Mitchell isn't just hiding assets from you. He's potentially committing tax fraud. The way these accounts are structured raises red flags. You want me to report him to the IRS? I asked, incredulous. No. I want you to get what you're entitled to in the divorce. He tapped the folder. With this information, your lawyer can request specific discovery that will force David to disclose these assets or commit perjury. Claire, ever protective, narrowed her eyes. That doesn't answer why you're helping her. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Melissa left me for David, claiming she needed more financial security than I could provide. Now they're having problems because, surprise, he's not as financially secure as he pretended to be. The money he's hidden would change that equation. So this is about hurting Melissa? I asked. No, he said firmly. It's about truth. You deserve to know what you're fighting for. What you do with this information is entirely up to you. I studied his face, looking for signs of deception or hidden motives, but saw only the same weariness I felt, the exhaustion of someone who'd been betrayed and was still finding their way forward. Thank you, I said finally. I'll show these to my lawyer. Thomas nodded and stood to leave. There's one more thing you should know. He hesitated, seeming to reconsider, then continued. Lily isn't David's biological child. The coffee shop seemed to fall silent around us, though the ambient noise continued unchanged. What? I managed. Melissa was already pregnant when she and David got together. She let him believe he was the father because she wanted his support, financial and otherwise. Thomas's expression was unreadable. I only found out recently myself, through a mutual friend. I don't think David knows. How can you be certain? Claire asked, voicing the question I couldn't formulate. The timing doesn't work, Thomas said simply. Melissa was at least 6 weeks pregnant when she first met David. Do the math. With that bombshell delivered, he left, leaving Claire and me staring at each other in shock. Do you believe him? Claire asked, once we'd recovered enough to speak. I don't know, I admitted. But these financial documents seem legitimate. Amanda can verify them. And the paternity claim? I shook my head. That's not my business anymore. If Lily isn't David's, that's between him and Melissa. But as we drove home, Thomas's revelation kept replaying in my mind. If Lily wasn't David's biological child, the entire foundation of his betrayal shifted. Not that it excused his affair, but it added another layer of deception, one in which David himself was a victim. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I had been painfully trying to conceive David's child, he had been raising someone else's, believing it was his own. I decided not to share this particular information with Amanda unless it became relevant to the divorce proceedings. Some truths weren't mine to wield, even against someone who had hurt me so deeply. The financial documents, however, were a different matter. The next morning, I scanned everything Thomas had provided and emailed it to Amanda with a brief explanation of its source. Her response was immediate and enthusiastic. This is gold. Call me ASAP. During our call, Amanda explained the significance of what Thomas had shared. If these accounts and properties exist and weren't disclosed in his financial affidavit, David committed perjury, she said. That gives us enormous leverage. The court doesn't look kindly on hidden assets. Could he go to jail? I asked, uncertain how I felt about that possibility. Unlikely for a first offense, but he could face serious sanctions from the court and potentially from the Bar Association. His career would be at risk. I don't want to destroy his career, I said slowly. I just want what's fair. This isn't about vengeance, Amanda assured me. It's about transparency. He's legally obligated to disclose all assets in a divorce. If he's hiding substantial property and accounts, you're entitled to your share. She outlined our next steps, filing a motion for expanded discovery, specifically requesting information about the LLC and associated properties and accounts. If David failed to disclose them after this explicit request, we would present our evidence to the court. "Let me handle the legal strategy," Amanda said. "You focus on taking care of yourself." That evening, alone in the house that no longer felt like a home, I examined my feelings about this new development. There was satisfaction, certainly, the vindication of discovering I wasn't crazy to suspect David had been hiding things from me. But there was also sadness for the man I had loved, who had become someone capable of such calculated deception. What kind of person maintains secret bank accounts during a 15-year marriage? What kind of lawyer risks his career to hide assets from his wife? Had I ever really known David at all? I poured a glass of wine and took it to the back porch, watching twilight settle over the garden. The daffodils had faded, replaced now by late spring blooms. Life continuing its cycle, indifferent to human drama. My phone chimed with a text from David. "Need to pick up some summer clothes tomorrow. Planning to come by around 11 if that works." I typed back a simple, "Fine." Then, on impulse, added, "You might want to bring boxes for your law books, too. I'm converting the office into a writing room." His response came quickly. "Writing room? I'm working on a novel," I replied, feeling a small thrill at saying it out loud, or at least in text to him. "I need the space." The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before his answer came through. "I didn't know you were still writing." Of course he didn't know. I had buried that dream so deeply that even I had almost forgotten it. But it had survived, dormant beneath the surface of our marriage, waiting for the chance to emerge. "There's a lot you don't know about me," I texted back, then put my phone on silent and returned to watching the darkening garden. The knowledge of David's hidden assets and the question of Lily's paternity were powerful in their way. But the most significant power I had discovered wasn't in secrets about David. It was in rediscovering the truth about myself. The woman I had been before I became Mrs. Mitchell was still there, patient and persistent, ready to reclaim her life. That night, I wrote 3 new pages of my novel before bed. Small steps, but in a direction entirely my own. The revelation of David's hidden assets changed the trajectory of our divorce proceedings. Amanda Santos filed motions requesting specific financial discovery about the LLC and associated properties, setting a legal trap that David couldn't easily escape. Either he would have to disclose what he'd been hiding, committing perjury on his previous financial affidavit, or he'd have to continue lying and risk being exposed by our evidence. "Don't contact him about this," Amanda warned when I called to check on the filing status. "Let him think everything is proceeding normally. The element of surprise is crucial here." I agreed, though keeping such significant information to myself was difficult. When David came to collect his law books, I acted as if nothing had changed, maintaining a cold but civil distance. "You're really writing again?" he asked as he packed books into cardboard boxes, glancing at the notes and index cards I'd pinned to the office bulletin board. "Yes," I said simply, offering no further explanation. He nodded, looking uncertain. "That's good. You always talked about writing a novel someday." The casual reminder that he had known about this dream, had even encouraged it in the early days of our relationship, stung unexpectedly. How had something so important to me become a footnote in our marriage, an indefinitely postponed someday project? "Someday is now," I told him, and left him to his packing. 2 days later, Amanda called with news. "David's lawyer requested a meeting," she said, a note of satisfaction in her voice. "They want to discuss settlement options before responding to our discovery motion." "They know," I realized. "Someone tipped them off about what we found." "Possibly," Amanda agreed. "Or they're just trying to avoid an expensive discovery process. Either way, it's a good sign. They're on the defensive now." The settlement meeting was scheduled for the following week at Amanda's office. In the meantime, I focused on practical matters, opening new bank accounts in my maiden name, researching health insurance options for after the divorce, and continuing to work on my novel. Claire called daily for updates, her protective instincts in full force. "I still don't trust this Thomas guy," she admitted during one call. "His information might be legitimate, but his motives seem murky." "His motives don't matter if the information is accurate," I pointed out. "And Amanda says the LLC and property records check out. Just be careful," she cautioned. "You're in a vulnerable position." I appreciated her concern but didn't feel vulnerable anymore. Something had shifted in me since finding those documents. The initial shock and grief of David's betrayal had hardened into a steady resolve. I wasn't seeking revenge, but I wouldn't accept being victimized a second time through financial deception. The day before the settlement meeting, I drove to the bank and opened a safe deposit box in my own name, something I'd never had before. Inside, I placed copies of all the documents Thomas had provided, along with backups of important personal papers. No one would have access to this box but me. No shared keys, no joint signatures required. As I closed the box, I realized I was smiling. This small act of independence felt significant, a concrete step toward a future where I controlled my own information, my own resources, my own security. That evening, David texted, "Good luck at the meeting tomorrow. I hope we can resolve this amicably." I stared at the message, surprised by the conciliatory tone. Did he know what we'd discovered? Was he trying to gauge how much I knew? I decided not to respond. Amanda had advised me to dress conservatively for the meeting, like a respectable teacher, not someone looking for revenge, as she put it. I chose a navy dress with a cardigan, pearl earrings my grandmother had left me, and low heels. Professional but not aggressive, wealthy enough to be comfortable, but not flashy enough to undermine claims for support. When I arrived at Amanda's office the next morning, she was waiting in the lobby, impeccable in a charcoal suit. "Ready?" she asked, studying my face. I nodded. "More than ready." She briefed me quickly before we entered the conference room. "David and Richard Hoffman are already here. Remember, no matter what they say, let me do the talking. If you need to communicate something to me, write it down. And above all, maintain your composure." The conference room was spacious, but felt claustrophobic as soon as I entered. David sat across the long table, wearing what I recognized as his serious client suit, the one he saved for high-stakes meetings. Richard Hoffman sat beside him, a leather portfolio open before him. David's eyes met mine briefly, then skittered away. He looked tired, I noticed, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that makeup and expensive suits couldn't hide. Amanda and I took our seats, and Richard began with the expected pleasantries, thanking us for agreeing to meet, expressing hope for an amenable resolution, the usual legal choreography. "My client is prepared to offer a generous settlement," he continued, sliding a document across the table. "We believe this addresses Mrs. Mitchell's needs while recognizing Mr. Mitchell's ongoing obligations to his daughter." Amanda took the document but didn't look at it immediately. "Before we discuss specifics, I should note that we've identified some concerning omissions in Mr. Mitchell's financial affidavit." Richard's expression remained neutral, but David shifted in his chair. "Omissions?" Richard asked. "Yes," Amanda said pleasantly. "Substantial ones, actually. Property in Maine. An LLC called Mitchell Holdings. Several accounts associated with that entity." Richard turned to David, a silent communication passing between them. David's face had gone pale. "We're prepared to amend the financial disclosures," Richard said carefully. "There may have been some oversights in the initial filing." "Oversights," Amanda repeated, her tone making it clear how ridiculous she found this characterization. "Well, we appreciate your willingness to correct these oversights. However, the fact that they exist at all raises questions about the completeness of Mr. Mitchell's disclosures." She finally glanced at the settlement offer, scanning it quickly. "This proposal is based on an incomplete picture of the marital assets. We'll need full disclosure before we can consider any settlement terms." Richard leaned forward. "We're prepared to include the additional assets in a revised settlement. Perhaps if you shared what information you have, we could expedite the process." It was a clever attempt to determine exactly what we knew, but Amanda wasn't falling for it. "I think a complete amended financial affidavit would be the appropriate next step," she said firmly. "Once we have that, we can discuss settlement parameters." Richard and David exchanged another look before Richard nodded reluctantly. "We'll provide an amended affidavit by the end of next week." "One more thing," Amanda added. "Given the nature of these oversights, we'll be requesting verification documents for all disclosed assets. Bank statements, property records, investment accounts, the full spectrum." "That's excessive," Richard objected. The rules of discovery are quite clear when there's evidence of hidden assets," Amanda interrupted. "We can take this to the judge if you prefer, but I doubt Mr. Mitchell wants to explain these oversights in open court." The implied threat, that David could face not just divorce penalties, but potentially professional ones, hung in the air. After a moment of tense silence, Richard conceded. "We'll provide the verification documents with the amended affidavit." The meeting continued for another 30 minutes, with technical discussions about timelines and procedures. Throughout, I maintained the calm, dignified expression Amanda had recommended, though inside I was churning with a complex mix of satisfaction and sadness. This clinical dismantling of our financial life together felt like the final death knell of our marriage. As we prepared to leave, David spoke directly to me for the first time. "Sarah, could we talk privately for a moment?" Amanda looked to me questioningly. I hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. We stepped into a small side office while the lawyers remained in the conference room. "How did you find out?" David asked once the door closed behind us. "Does it matter?" He sighed, shoulders slumping. "I guess not. I never intended for any of this to happen." "Which part?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "The affair? The secret child? Or the hidden money?" "All of it." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache despite everything. The cabin in Maine was supposed to be a surprise for our 15th anniversary. Then everything with Melissa happened, and I just left it in the LLC. I almost laughed at the absurdity. "You expect me to believe you hid hundreds of thousands of dollars as an anniversary surprise?" "Not all of it," he admitted, "but that's how it started. Then after Melissa got pregnant, I panicked. I knew eventually I'd have to tell you, and I wanted to make sure we were both protected financially." "Protected from what?" "Me?" The irony was bitter. "I never would have taken your money, David. All I wanted was honesty. I know that now." He looked genuinely remorseful, but I'd seen his courtroom performances too many times to trust his sincerity. "For what it's worth, Melissa and I aren't together anymore. Haven't been for weeks. This information should have affected me somehow, but I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, not even curiosity about what had gone wrong. That's between you and her," I said. "It doesn't change anything for us." "No, I suppose it doesn't." He straightened, lawyer mask slipping back into place. "For what it's worth, I'll fully disclose everything now. No more games." I studied him, this man I'd loved for so long, trying to reconcile the David I'd married with the person standing before me now. "Was any of it real?" I asked suddenly, the question escaping before I could reconsider. "Our marriage, was any of it genuine?" His expression softened, and for a moment I glimpsed the man I'd known. "All of it was real, Sarah. I loved you, still love you. I just failed at showing it. Failed spectacularly." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I know I can't fix this," he continued, "but I want you to have everything you need to start over. The house, your share of all the assets, including the ones I didn't disclose, and whatever support you need. I don't want your guilt money," I said quietly. "I just want what's fair under the law, and my freedom." He nodded, accepting this boundary. "You'll have it." We returned to the conference room, where Amanda was already gathering her papers. "Everything all right?" she asked me. "Yes," I confirmed. "We're done here." As we left, I didn't look back at David. Whatever closure I had needed wouldn't come from him. It would have to come from within me. In the elevator, Amanda squeezed my arm gently. "You did well in there. Very dignified." "Is that what I was?" I asked with a small smile. I felt like I was barely holding it together. "That's the secret of good negotiation," she confided. "Everyone's barely holding it together. The winner is whoever hides it best." By that standard, I had definitely won today's round, but the victory felt hollow. I hadn't wanted to win against David. I had wanted a marriage that didn't turn into a battlefield in the first place. Outside, in the bright June sunshine, I took a deep breath and felt something shift inside me. Not healing exactly, but a corner turned, a path forward becoming visible. "What happens now?" I asked Amanda. "Now we wait for their amended affidavit, review it carefully, and negotiate a fair settlement based on the complete picture." She gave me an appraising look. "But something tells me you weren't asking about legal procedures." I smiled, appreciating her perceptiveness. "No, I guess I wasn't." "What happens now," she said carefully, "is whatever you want to happen. That's the beauty of ending a marriage. Painful as it is, it creates space for a new beginning." As I drove home, her words echoed in my mind. Space for a new beginning. The road ahead was unclear, But for the first time since my birthday revelation, I felt genuinely curious about where it might lead. July arrived with a heat wave and the amended financial affidavit from David's attorney. Amanda forwarded it to me with a note. He's disclosed everything we knew about and then some. Review attached and call me. The document revealed the full extent of David's hidden assets. The lake house in Maine valued at $375,000, investment accounts totaling just over $200,000, and a vintage car collection stored in a warehouse outside Boston, something I hadn't known about at all. During our call, Amanda sounded pleased. He's being surprisingly forthcoming. The settlement offer attached to this disclosure is quite generous. The house, half of all accounts including the previously hidden ones, the cabin in Maine, and 3 years of spousal support. It seems too easy, I said suspiciously. What's the catch? Honestly, I think he's desperate to avoid public embarrassment. A contested divorce with evidence of hidden assets could damage his professional reputation. Plus, she hesitated. Plus what? His law firm placed him on indefinite leave last week. It's not public knowledge yet, but my contacts at the courthouse mentioned it. Apparently, there were irregularities with a client trust account. My stomach dropped. Are you saying he took client money? No, nothing that serious. Administrative errors, not theft. But combined with the hidden assets in his divorce, it's not a good look. He needs this resolved quickly and quietly. I considered this information, feeling an unexpected twinge of concern for David despite everything. His career had been his identity for so long. Losing it, even temporarily, would be devastating to him. Should I accept the settlement? I asked. From a purely financial standpoint, yes. It's more than you'd likely get if we went to trial. Amanda's tone turned cautious. But settlements aren't just about money. You need to feel the outcome is just. If you need your day in court, we'll fight for that. I thought about it overnight, weighing justice against practicality, closure against prolonged conflict. By morning, my decision was clear. I called Amanda and authorized her to accept the settlement with a few minor adjustments. Are you sure? She asked. Once we sign, there's no going back. I'm sure, I told her. I want this chapter closed. With the settlement approaching finalization, I focused on practical matters, researching what renovations the house needed, planning a trip to see the Maine cabin I would soon own, and most importantly, finishing the first draft of my novel. Writing had become my sanctuary, the one place where David's betrayal couldn't touch me. The story, about a woman archaeologist uncovering a hidden historical truth, had nothing to do with my marriage, which felt like a victory in itself. I was creating something that didn't reference my pain. On a sweltering Thursday afternoon, I was deep in writing when the doorbell rang. Annoyed at the interruption, I answered to find Melissa Reynolds on my doorstep, looking uncomfortable but determined. My first instinct was to close the door, but curiosity won out. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you, she said, her composure faltering slightly under my stare. It's important. Against my better judgment, I let her in, leading her to the kitchen rather than the living room. I didn't want her presence tainting spaces that felt more personal. Make it quick, I said, not offering her a seat or a drink. Melissa remained standing, clutching her designer purse like a shield. I heard you and David are finalizing the divorce settlement. That's between David and me, I replied coolly. It doesn't concern you. Actually, it does. She took a deep breath. There's something you should know before you sign. Something about David that might affect your decision. I crossed my arms, skeptical but listening. David has been taking money from his firm's client trust accounts, she said bluntly. Small amounts over time, but it adds up to a substantial sum. That's where some of those hidden assets came from. The accusation hung in the air between us. If true, it was far worse than the administrative errors Amanda had mentioned. Why are you telling me this? I asked, studying her face for signs of deception. Because I'm afraid he's setting me up to take the fall, she answered, her composure cracking. I worked in accounting at his firm until recently. He used my credentials to access some of the accounts. If this comes out, it could look like I was involved. I leaned against the counter, processing this information. Why would I believe anything you say? You had an affair with my husband for years. You came to my house on my birthday and humiliated me in front of my family. I know, she acknowledged, looking genuinely remorseful. And I'm sorry for how that happened. But this isn't about our history. This is about preventing David from hurting more people, including you, I noted. Yes, including me. She met my eyes directly. I've made terrible choices, Sarah. I won't deny that, but I didn't steal from clients, and I won't let David blame me for his crimes. I considered her words carefully. Melissa had every reason to lie about David, but her story aligned with what Amanda had mentioned about irregularities at the firm, and David's eagerness to settle quickly made more sense if he was trying to resolve the divorce before potential criminal issues came to light. Do you have proof? I asked finally. She nodded, opening her purse to retrieve a flash drive. Everything's here. Account records, transfer dates, amounts. I made copies before I quit last week. I didn't take the drive. Why bring this to me? Why not go to the firm's partners or the bar association? Because they might not believe me, she admitted. I'm the mistress, the home wrecker. My credibility is shot. But you're the wronged wife with an impeccable reputation. If you raise concerns, people will listen. Her calculation was probably correct, which made me even more suspicious of her motives. There's something else you're not telling me, I said, watching her expression carefully. She hesitated, then sighed. The settlement David offered you. It's much more generous than you know. The cabin in Maine is worth twice what's listed on the disclosure. The investment accounts have almost double the funds shown. He's still hiding assets, just more cleverly this time. Now we were getting to the truth. And you want your share. I want what Lily deserves, she corrected. Child support based on his actual income and assets, not the reduced amount he's claiming. I almost laughed at the irony. Melissa coming to me for help securing money from David when she'd been the one to help him hide money from me. But beneath my initial reaction, a deeper concern emerged. If David was indeed committing financial crimes and still hiding assets, signing the settlement could potentially implicate me in his deception. And more importantly, it would mean accepting his continued lies. Leave the drive, I said finally. I need to verify this information. After Melissa left, I called Amanda and explained the situation. Don't touch that flash drive, she warned. If it contains confidential client information, accessing it could create legal problems for you. I'll have our forensic accountant examine it with proper precautions. If what she's saying is true, I asked, what does it mean for the settlement? It could invalidate it entirely, Amanda answered. Settlements based on fraudulent disclosures can be set aside by the court. But Sarah, be careful. This could be a manipulation tactic from a woman who has reason to resent both you and David. I appreciated Amanda's caution, but couldn't shake the feeling that Melissa was telling the truth, at least partially. The details aligned too neatly with other information we'd gathered. The next morning, Amanda called with troubling news. Our accountant reviewed the contents. The evidence of financial impropriety at the firm is compelling, though not conclusive. And you were right to be suspicious. The settlement disclosures still appear to be incomplete. What do we do now? I asked. We have two options, she explained. We can report this information to the appropriate authorities, the Bar Association, possibly law enforcement, and put the divorce on hold until these issues are resolved. Or we can use this information to negotiate a truly complete settlement. If David has been stealing from clients, I said slowly, don't we have an obligation to report it? Legally, no. You're not an officer of the court. Ethically, that's a personal decision. I spent the day wrestling with this dilemma. The thought of David facing potential criminal charges gave me no satisfaction. Despite everything, I didn't want to be the instrument of his destruction, but I also couldn't ignore potential financial crimes, especially ones that victimized clients who trusted him. By evening, I'd reached a decision. I texted David, we need to talk. In person. Tomorrow morning at the house. It's urgent. His reply came quickly. Is everything okay? I can come at 9. Nothing is okay, I wrote back. But come at 9. That night, I barely slept, rehearsing what I would say, trying to prepare for his reactions. By morning, I felt calm in a way that surprised me. The calm of absolute certainty. David arrived precisely at 9, looking worried and slightly disheveled. I invited him into the kitchen. Neutral territory, I'd decided, for this final confrontation. What's going on? He asked, declining my offer of coffee. Is there a problem with the settlement? You could say that. I placed Melissa's flash drive on the counter between us. She came to see me yesterday. His eyes fixed on the drive, and I watched the color drain from his face. What did she tell you? Everything, David. The client trust accounts, the additional hidden assets, how you used her credentials at the firm. I kept my voice steady. Is it true? He didn't answer immediately, his lawyer's instinct for self-preservation battling with some remnant of the honest man I'd once believed him to be. It's complicated, he finally said, the non-answer confirming my suspicions. It's really not, I countered. Either you stole from clients or you didn't. Either you're still hiding assets or you're not. He sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly looking older than his 43 years. I borrowed from the accounts, he admitted. I always planned to replace the funds. And yes, there are assets not fully disclosed in the settlement. The confession, so simple after weeks of deception, was almost anticlimactic. Why? I asked, genuinely wanting to understand. We had a good life, David. A comfortable home, stable careers, enough money for what we needed. Why risk everything for more? He stared at his hands, unable to meet my eyes. It started small, extra expenses for Melissa and Lily. Then the lifestyle became expected. Nice restaurants, expensive gifts, private preschool. Before I knew it, I was in too deep. So you stole, I said flatly. From clients, from your firm, from me. I was going to pay it all back, he insisted. The market investments were doing well, and once everything settled down with the divorce. Stop, I cut him off, unwilling to hear more justifications. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to contact your firm today and confess everything. You're going to make arrangements to repay every penny you took. And you're going to provide a complete, honest financial disclosure for our divorce. Every account, every asset, every penny. He looked up, stunned by my directness. Sarah, if I go to the firm, my career is over. I could face criminal charges. Yes, I agreed calmly. Those are the consequences of your actions. And if I don't? A hint of the calculating lawyer emerged. Then I take this drive to the managing partners myself, and to the Bar Association, and if necessary, to the district attorney. I let my words sink in. I don't want to do that, David, but I will. The ultimatum hung between us. For a moment, I glimpsed the man I'd married, thoughtful, principled, capable of doing the right thing even when difficult. I'll do it, he said finally. All of it. You're right. I need to face this. I nodded, feeling no triumph, only relief that this final deception would end without me having to destroy him completely. There's one more thing, I added. Melissa told me something else you should know. His expression turned wary. What? I hesitated, weighing the impact of what I was about to say. She said Lily might not be your biological child, that she was already pregnant when you two got together. His face crumpled, the last pretense of control vanishing. No, he whispered. That's not possible. She wouldn't have lied about that. I don't know if it's true, I said gently, surprised by my own compassion for his pain. But you deserve to know the possibility exists. David pressed his hands against his face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I watched him break, this man who had once been the center of my world, and felt a complicated mixture of pity, vindication, and finally, release. After a few minutes, he composed himself enough to speak. I've destroyed everything, he said, his voice raw. Our marriage, my career, even my relationship with Lily. Whether she's biologically mine or not, she's still my daughter in every way that matters. You haven't destroyed everything, I said quietly. You've still got a chance to do the right thing now, to make amends where possible, to be honest, finally. He nodded, the weight of this truth visible in his posture. I'm sorry, Sarah, for all of it. You deserved so much better. Yes, I agreed simply. I did. When he left an hour later, it was with a promise to contact his firm immediately and to have his lawyer submit a completely revised financial disclosure within the week. I watched him drive away, feeling oddly lightened. This confrontation hadn't been about revenge or even justice. It had been about truth, the final dismantling of the web of lies that had entangled us both. That afternoon, I called Amanda to update her on what had happened. You handled that perfectly, she said, sounding impressed. Most people would have gone straight to the authorities. That wouldn't have helped anyone, I replied. This way, the clients have a chance of getting their money back, and David has a chance to rebuild some kind of life afterward. And what about you? She asked. What chance are you giving yourself? I looked around the kitchen, where so much of my married life had played out, where I'd cooked countless meals for David, where we'd discussed our plans and dreams. where I'd learned of his betrayal on my birthday. "I'm giving myself the chance to start over," I said, completely. 6 months after that final confrontation in my kitchen, I stood on the shore of a Maine lake, watching autumn leaves swirl across the water's surface. The cabin, my cabin now, stood behind me, its windows reflecting the fiery colors of October. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, with a settlement far more equitable than David's initial offer, thanks to his complete financial disclosure. I had kept the house in Lexington but decided to sell it, preferring to start fresh somewhere without memories embedded in every room. The cabin had become my weekend retreat while I figured out my next steps. David had faced the consequences of his actions with more dignity than I expected. He'd confessed everything to his firm, resigned his position, and worked out a repayment plan for the misappropriated funds. The partners, more concerned about the firm's reputation than punishment, had agreed not to press criminal charges as long as every client was made whole. The Bar Association had suspended his license for 2 years, a significant penalty, but not a permanent one. As for Melissa, a paternity test had confirmed what Thomas Reynolds suggested. David was not Lily's biological father. That revelation had sent shockwaves through what remained of their relationship, though David had chosen to maintain a role in Lily's life. "Biology doesn't change how I feel about her," he'd told me during one of our final conversations before the divorce was finalized. I had moved forward with my own life, step by careful step. The novel I'd started during the darkest days of the divorce was now complete, and in the hands of a literary agent Claire had introduced me to. I'd taken a sabbatical from teaching to focus on writing and healing, supported by the divorce settlement that gave me financial breathing room for the first time in my adult life. My family remained my steadfast support system. Claire visited often, filling the cabin with her laughter and relentless optimism. My parents, initially worried about my decision to spend time alone in the wilderness, though the cabin had every modern amenity, had come to respect my need for solitude and reflection. Old friendships had been rekindled, including my college relationship with Jennifer, who had visited from Seattle over the summer. New connections formed too, a writing group in the nearby town, a hiking club that explored the woodland trails surrounding the lake, and most surprising of all, a tentative new romance had begun to blossom with Michael, a professor of environmental science I'd met at a local bookstore. Our coffee dates had evolved into hiking excursions, long conversations by the fireplace, and a gentle physical relationship that respected my need to proceed slowly. At 40, I was discovering that second chances at love could be richer and more authentic than first ones, built on the foundation of hard-won self-knowledge. As I stood by the lake that October afternoon, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal that had seemed like an ending had actually been a beginning, painful and unwanted, but a beginning nonetheless. I heard footsteps on the dock behind me and turned to see Michael approaching, carrying 2 mugs of the spiced cider we'd prepared earlier. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, handing me a steaming mug. I smiled, accepting both the cider and his company, just reflecting. "It's been exactly 1 year since my birthday, the day everything fell apart." Michael nodded, understanding without needing the full story again. "Anniversaries have power, don't they? Even the difficult ones. Especially the difficult ones," I agreed. "But this year feels different. Last year I was blindsided, devastated. This year, I gestured to the lake, the cabin, the beautiful autumn day. This year, I'm standing in a life I chose, not one that happened to me." He gave me the space to continue my reflection, one of the qualities I most appreciated about him. Michael never rushed conversations or emotions, never made me feel that my processing was taking too long. "I've been thinking about forgiveness lately," I admitted. "Not for David's sake, but for my own. Carrying anger is exhausting." "Have you found it? Forgiveness?" I considered the question carefully. "Not completely, but I'm finding something else that serves the same purpose. Perspective. I can see now that what happened wasn't just about me, or even about David and me. It was about his own demons, his choices, his flaws. That's wisdom," Michael said quietly, separating your story from his. We stood in comfortable silence, watching a pair of loons glide across the lake's surface. The peace I felt wasn't the naive security of my marriage. It was deeper, earned through pain and recovery. "I submitted the final revisions to the novel today," I told him. "Jennifer thinks we might hear from publishers by Christmas." Michael's smile was genuine, his pride in my accomplishment evident. "That's wonderful, Sarah. Whatever happens with publishers, Finishing it is the real victory. He was right. Completing the novel represented more than a creative achievement. It symbolized my reclamation of dreams I'd set aside during my marriage, the parts of myself I'd diminished to fit someone else's expectations. Later that evening, as we prepared dinner in the cabin's rustic kitchen, my phone chimed with a text message. It was from David, the first communication we'd had in weeks. I know what today is, 1 year since everything changed. I just wanted to say I'm sorry again, and to tell you I'm doing better. Therapy, sobriety, honest work. Lily asks about you sometimes. I tell her you're a good person who deserved better than what happened. I hope you're finding happiness, Sarah. You deserve it more than anyone. I showed the message to Michael, who read it thoughtfully. Are you going to respond? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to maintain the distance we've established, but another part recognizes he's trying to change. There's no rush to decide, Michael reminded me, returning to chopping vegetables. You can sit with it as long as you need. That night, after Michael had fallen asleep, I sat by the cabin's picture window, looking out at the moonlight reflecting on the lake. I thought about David's message, about the year that had passed, about the woman I had become through loss and recovery. Finally, I typed a simple response. Thank you for your message. I'm glad to hear you're doing better. I am too. Take care of yourself and Lily. I hesitated before adding a final line. I hope you find your way forward, David. We all deserve second chances. Sending the text felt like releasing the last thread that tied me to my old life, not with anger or bitterness, but with acceptance and the quiet dignity I had fought so hard to reclaim. The next morning, I woke early and took my coffee to the dock, watching the sun rise over the water. Mist hovered above the surface, creating an ethereal landscape that seemed to represent the boundary between past and future. My novel's protagonist, the archaeologist who uncovered hidden truths, had concluded her story with these words. The past doesn't disappear when we discover its secrets, but once revealed, those secrets lose their power to define us. I had written those words for her, but they were equally true for me. The secrets and betrayals of my marriage would always be part of my story, but they were no longer the whole story, or even the most important part. As the sun rose higher, burning away the mist, I thought about the day ahead. I would finish winterizing the cabin's garden, call my agent about the manuscript, prepare for Michael's classes that would keep him busy next week, perhaps start outlining my second novel, an idea that had been forming during my morning walks. These ordinary plans, this simple forward momentum, represented the greatest victory of all, the reclaiming of ordinary happiness after extraordinary pain. The woman who had collapsed in shock and grief on her 40th birthday still existed within me, but she was now accompanied by someone stronger, someone who had walked through fire and emerged not unscathed, but undefeated. Someone who had learned that the end of one dream could herald the beginning of many others. Someone who understood that betrayal could break a heart, but couldn't break a spirit unless given permission. 1 year ago, a child I'd never met had called my husband Daddy and shattered the foundation of my life. Today, I stood on a foundation of my own building, uneven in places, still under construction, but undeniably mine. The lake rippled with a sudden breeze, sending small waves lapping against the shore. Nature's reminder that even still waters are always in motion, always changing, always moving forward. Like me, I took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air and smiled. Whatever came next, I was ready.